This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so last couple of weeks, what we discussed is around basics of cloud or introduction to cloud. And we also talked about introduction to Azure. So from this week onwards, we will be starting to discuss the core components or the core IT components that makes up the IT infrastructure. So this week and possibly next week also, we will be sticking around compute and we will be moving to network. Network, I think we will spend at least 2 to 3 weeks on network, and we will move on to storage later. Then we will talk about data, databases, and so on, followed by security. And then we will move on to the regular cloud operations work. When I say cloud operations, they generally do monitoring, backup, migration, and then integration with ITSM tools, alerting, configurations, and so on. So we are planning to get into the core IT concept. So we will spend the entire month or month end off with these core components, and we will move on to the regular routine operation stuff. Okay, so let's start with the Azure basics now. Okay, so in order to have a contractual agreement, or if you want to create something in Microsoft Data Center, we need to create a account followed by a subscription. So when I say account, an Azure account can be a Google Mail ID, or it can be a GitHub account, or even it can be a Microsoft account. So earlier we used to call the Microsoft account as Live ID or Hotmail ID or the Outlook.com. So there used to be a lot of domain. So we can either go with Microsoft email ID, or you can go with GitHub account, or you can also use third-party Gmail or whatever, right? So if you have an existing ID, you can use that, okay? And then you have to go and purchase a subscription. So primarily you can go with three major category. One is the free tier category, and then you can go with the pay as you go pricing model category. If you are creating a subscription for your enterprise customer, you can go with the enterprise agreement, and there are multiple different support plan within that. So we discussed about the different support plan option: basic, developer, premium, and we also discussed about the standard plan. Okay, we also discussed about the differences between them. So now, as a student, as a beginner to Azure, you need to go and create a free tier account. And with that free tier account, you will be able to create as many resources as you want for 30 days. It is a free trial account. And with the free trial account, you get a credit of 200 US dollars, and approximately it is around 13,500 or 14,000 rupees, Indian rupees. And you can create any services or product using that credit for a period of 30 days. If you create it within that, I mean, if you are creating services for $200 within 10 days or 20 days, automatically your free tier will expire. Or if you are not using that credit for 30 days, even after 30 days, your credit will expire. So either ways, you have to go and create services for the first 30 days using this 200 USD. And after the first month, you have a lot of services which are always free or 12 months free. 12 months of free services which are very popular. So how do we identify these items? So if you go to azure.microsoft.com/free, you will be able to differentiate which services are free always, which services are free for 12 months, and which services are covered within a particular category. See, you can see that they are grouped into three different categories. Popular free services for 12 months. These services are free only for 12 months. And there are certain services which are always free. And you can actually go and create an account, and you will get a $200 Azure credit. And using that, you will be able to create as many services as you want within the first 30 days. Okay, so you can see that the services are tagged with 12 months, always free, and so on, right? So for the first 12 months, you can create B1S burstable VM category, and you can run it for 750 hours. 750 hours is nothing but 1 month, right? So this is the number of hours you have in a month. And if you compare it with AWS, they also have a similar category called T2 Micro, which is again free for Windows and Linux for the first 1 year, right? It is almost the same like AWS, okay? And you also have services which are free for 12 months, which are always free. And there are some other categories you can, you need to be very careful, because when I say always free, only if you create 10 web application or mobile application or API application, it is free and with 1 GB of storage. Beyond that, it is not free. Okay, you need to be mindful about the numbers also, about the limit also. So you can go and look at all the free services. You can get to understand these are the complete list of Azure services, okay, on the first column, and you can understand what category that it falls into. For example, Azure Advisor, Azure App Services, they have got always free category, whereas archive storage is free for 12 months, and after that it will be chargeable. So you can get to understand the complete list of Azure services with their category of free tier. Okay, so let me close this. So you can find it under this particular link, azure.microsoft.com/free will give you the complete details about which services are free for 12 months, which ones are always free, and which ones you can create within the initial first 30 days. Okay, so in order to create a subscription with Microsoft, you need to have some additional details. So you can have either a banking debit card or a credit card. This is mainly to do a credibility check. Okay, so for example, if you go and subscribe for any applications in your App Store or Play Store, like Uber or Zomato or whatever, right? So they actually do a credibility check. This is just to ensure that the person who is subscribing for the services or having some kind of banking transaction, or they have enabled their account for banking usability, right? So this is mainly to do a credibility check. They will just try to take 2 Indian rupees from your account, and then they will return it back within 3 to 5 working days or business days. Okay, so just it is for credibility check, just to ensure that no one is misusing the subscription. So it will check your identity, and it will check whether you have a banking transaction in your particular country. Okay, and there are other things that it will ask. I think those are all not mandatory. It will ask for PAN card, it will ask for mobile number is mandatory. You need to provide your mobile number, you need to provide your address, full address. This is mainly for your identity validation. Okay, and I think this should be sufficient. Okay, so let's start with creating a new Azure account. So in order to start with that, you need to have a email ID. And as I told you, you can use your existing Gmail or GitHub or Microsoft account. Microsoft account has got multiple domain. Microsoft.com is there, Outlook.com, Hotmail.com, Live.com. You can use any of those. Okay, so if you just go to signup.live.com, you will get this screen, and you can just say get a new email address, and from the drop down you can either choose outlook.com or hotmail.com. So I'll go with outlook.com, and I'll just call it as skillabistan at outlook.com. Let's see if it is available. Okay, I'll just go and create a password for that. Okay, I can enable the option to get some tips and offers from Microsoft products if needed. Okay, I can just give it some name. Okay, you can just fill in that details. Okay, so this is just to ensure that you are not a robot. Okay, so let's see. Use the arrows to rotate the animal face to in the direction of the hand. Okay. Okay, let's submit. Done. Okay. So this is just to ensure that you are a human and you are not a robot. Okay, so verification is done. Just give it a second. It will redirect you to the account creation window. Okay, so we are now done with creating a email ID, right? You can either do it with Microsoft or you can do it with Google Mail, or you can also do it on GitHub also. Okay, so now I have the option to go and get a Microsoft 365 subscription. I can register this device with Microsoft account, and that is the advantage of going with creating a Microsoft account. You can integrate with their software as a service offering, and also you can do a device registration. But now what I'm going to do with this account is to create a subscription for Azure, okay, not with Microsoft 365. So in order to do that, okay, you can just go to this same azure.microsoft.com, okay, the same portal, and then you can just say start free. Or you also have two options here. You can also go and say you will have 30 days to use. I can just click on this option, and I can create a free account. Okay, let's start with the free tier sign up. Okay, so it is asking for your credential. So I'll go with the new account, not the one which I have existing. Okay, let me go with the incognito window because I have signed up with a new account. Okay, if you are using your laptop, your own laptop, then you can save it. Or else if you are using a shared desktop at office, don't save the credential. Okay, so we are creating an Azure free account to access the 12-month free services, always free services, and also you will get a 13,000 credit to use in the first 30 days. Okay, and one important thing that everyone will be asking about, whether Microsoft will automatically charge your credit card or debit card, right? They will not charge, or they will not take anything automatically from your account. There is no automatic charges. After the first 30 days, if you are converting your free tier account into pay as you go account, after pay as you go account, so you are going to pay based on your consumption, based on your utilization. You will be receiving a bill and you have to pay after the 30 days. Okay, and they are not going to take it automatically from your account, but you can enable it. You can enable to enable for automatic charges, but then it's up to you. But by default, there is no automatic charges on your debit card or credit card from Microsoft. Okay, you will just receive a bill and you have to pay based on the bill actually. Okay, so you can also raise a case with Microsoft if in case you feel you have been charged or your bill is not appropriate. You can raise a case. Okay, so you can just go and fill the other details. You can choose the location from where you are going to use this Azure account. You can fill in the first name, last name, email address, and you can also fill in your phone number. Phone number, they say it is okay, so I'll fill in that because we are going to get a OTP, one-time password. Please do not enter the country code because like you have already selected the country or region on the top. You can just go with your mobile number. Okay, you can text or call. So it will send you a text message with a code. Okay, I have received that. It will be a 6-digit one-time password. It will be valid for a particular minute or so. Okay, once after entering the code, you can verify that. So you can just enter your organization name. It can be anything, and PAN card is optional. If you want to enter it, you can enter it, and you can give the address details. Okay, so once after you fill in the address, you can just agree to their subscription agreement, and you can also accept the information tips and offers from Microsoft. It's up to you. For the second option, it's not mandatory, but you need to understand the code of conduct and you have to agree the subscription agreement. Only then you will be able to move further. And next step, you have to verify your identity by card now. Okay, so we already verified our mobile number. We received a one-time password and we got that verified. Mobile number is verified. Now we are going to verify our credibility with the banking transaction. It can be a debit card or it can be a credit card. Okay, it will take a second to validate whether we have entered all the necessary details. Okay, now we are moving on to the temporary authorization. So as I said, they will only charge 2 Indian rupees for only 3 to 5 business days and they will return it. Okay, and you won't be charged unless you move to pay-as-you-go pricing model. So very important thing, sometime back, maybe 6, 7 years back, we used to get a lot of prepaid cards or virtual credit card and all those things. And a lot of those options are now no more possible, but there are certain options which is possible. If you look at my session YouTube channel, I've given you which type of pre-credit or ready credit cards can be used or virtual cards can be used. So there are some options that are still working, but I'll leave it up to you. So I would prefer you to use a valid debit card or a credit card instead of going with the virtual option. So there are certain options which you can use. You can go and pay like 100 rupees and you can get a virtual credit card or debit card, and you can use that if you don't have any other option. Okay, so I'm going with my card details. So for security reasons, I'll reshare my screen here. Okay, once after I enter my details and confirm, I'll reshare my screen. Okay, you can enter either debit card or credit card, both will work. I'm entering the details. Okay, let me share my screen again. So I've received a one-time password for my banking transaction. Okay, so they are going to charge only 2 Indian rupees and they will return that 2 Indian rupees by 3 to 5 business days. Okay, yeah, so it is valid only for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. So now we have verified both mobile number as well as we have verified our banking transaction. Okay, so it is you have to be patient here, so don't refresh or don't do anything. Okay, so I've just added a new payment and you can just go and say sign up. Okay, it is confirming your information that you have provided. Okay, so now we are ready to start with creating the products and services with Azure. Okay, sometimes you will receive a call from your banking provider. Okay, for example, if you are using your SBI card or different card, they will start checking with you if you are going to use it for some business purpose or if you're going to use it for any enterprise agreement. They have different options and they will suggest you with using a different saving, I mean, instead of using your savings account, they will ask you to go and use a current account and so on. So you might get some call from your banking provider based on your transaction, but it won't happen for all the different situation. Okay, so now you can get started with Azure. You have this quick start center through which you can go and start creating something on your Azure portal, and you get a lot of options to deal with here. So once after you create it, you can directly go to portal.azure.com. This is your one single sign-on portal where you can access all the products and services from Microsoft. So you have all these options available. Quick Start Center, you can click on this and you can start from the scratch. And also you get a kind of tour option where you can click on Start Tour. It will give you option on how you can access the different resources, what are the different options that is available. If you want to go back to the home screen, you have this option. You can click on the home screen, and in the dashboard, it will give you what are the different resources, services, what are the different alerts that are there. And you can also click on all services to access all the different services that you can create. And it is giving you a walkthrough where are the different options, right? On the left, this is where you go and select all the products and services. And this particular top search bar or the search menu will give you the option to go and search for any resource. You can type any resource and you can find it here, either as a product or a service, or even the resource that you have created can be searched here. Even you can access some of the Microsoft documentation from this particular search icon. And on the right, you have the option to switch between multiple different subscription. And also you have the option, this is the main option where you will get all the notification. The bell icon will show you what are the different updates that are going on, what are the different activities that is happening. And here you can go and raise a support ticket with Microsoft. If you click on this help and start, this is where you get the option to raise a support request or get some help on your account. Finally, you can switch on different accounts that you have got. Okay, that is the different option on a very high level. We will use all these options as we move further. And once after you are done with creating the account, the very first thing you need to check is the subscription. Okay, if you click on the subscription, you will start seeing a free trial subscription here. After 30 days, you have to convert this to pay as you go model. So you have the option to cancel the subscription. If you don't want to use it, you can cancel the subscription. And if you want to convert it to pay as you go, you can also do that, right? So you will get the details here, how many days are left for upgrading your account. So once after you complete the 30 days, you can click on this option upgrade to convert your account to a higher category. When I say higher category, it can be an enterprise agreement or it can be a pay as you go subscription model. But for now, you can leave it as such and you can continue to use that. Okay, now we have got a free trial account and you have got how much? You have got 13,300 credit. You can use that for creating different services in Microsoft Azure portal. Okay, so you can also click on this bell icon. You will start seeing more events here after we start using it. Okay, so this is how we create a account with Azure, as well as we go and create a, this is how you go and create a subscription, right? There are also some more sponsored subscription like MSDN and some specific subscription, Visual Studio subscription, that is available for corporate users. If you're working for a particular company, based on their agreement with Microsoft, they will also get some free tier bucket or free tier credit. Using that, they will share that particular MSDN or Visual Studio subscription with their employees. Okay, that is mainly based on the purchase of certain product or services from Microsoft. If a particular organization is purchasing some Visual Studio subscription or MSDN subscription, they will also get some credit through that channel. Those are all sponsored subscription, which will be shared among the employees. Okay, so now as a student, as a particular beginner to Azure, we have to go with this particular method that I have showed you, and you can start working on creating the resource. So any questions so far on how to create an account, on how to subscribe for Azure subscription?
Stan,
Yeah.
so in case after 30 days, if the means if the trial version period get over, okay. So so we already registered our record details in account, right? So is there any
Mhm.
possible like auto detection it will happen in our account?
No, see, automatic charges will never happen. Okay, so you will receive a bill and you have to pay the bill based on that. See, there are options where you can go and say automatically debit from your account. If you enable that, then automatically they can do that. But by default, it is not automatic charges.
Okay. So a bill in the sense like more than the free trial, more than the services whatever they have given for the free services. If we are using that,
Mhm.
for that we will be getting, right?
Correct. Whatever paid services you are using, so you will get a bill for
Okay.
that. See, for example, if you go to Cost Explorer here, okay, let me go to the cost management. I'll mute your line. There is a lot of background noise. Let me mute your line. So if you go to the invoice here under the billing section, okay, so you will get a kind of bill for your month. Okay, let me just click on this disabled subscription. I'll just select this. So you will get a month-on-month invoice, and you can edit that invoice, or you can just go and check how much bill you have received for that particular month, and you can pay for that. Okay, so this is also a kind of subscription, sponsored subscription that I'm using, but you will get it under the billing invoice here. So month on month, you will get a bill, and if you have used some paid services beyond your always free or free services, then you will get some charges, and you have to pay for that invoice, like your credit card or any particular subscription.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so fine. Okay, let us move on. Okay, so we already talked about the different support plan. We talked about the comparison about basic, developer, standard, professional, direct, and premier tier. And once after you do this, there are a lot of different purchasing option. When I say purchasing option, different customer will have different requirement. Some customer will plan to run their application for 1 year, 3 year, and so on, and they know that they are going to have a long-term relationship with Microsoft. If they have that particular uh, plan in place, then they can go for reservations, they can go for a contractual dedicated host or dedicated host group that can give them a lot of cost benefit. So you will get to understand the purchasing options as we move with each and every category, like compute and containers and all those things. So you'll get to understand how reservations can be done, how dedicated host, dedicated instance can be purchased. So we'll get into that later, but for now, let's go and start creating something in Azure portal. So here, what we have done is we have created an Azure account and we have created an Azure subscription. And the third important thing that you need to do, create Azure account and subscription. Okay, so next step, create a resource in Azure. So three important stuffs are needed. Okay, number one, you have a account, which is nothing but your email ID. In order to create a resource in Azure, you need an Azure account and you need an Azure subscription. So we have got what skill up with Stan at outlook.com. This is the account, and this is your Azure free trial subscription. And now we need to have a Azure resource group in order to create a resource. Okay, so these three are mandatory before you go and create any resource in Azure portal. Okay, when I say resource group, a lot of customers will have different application, different environment, different teams supporting different systems or resources. So you need to have a resource group in order to have the permissions, policies, or you will create it based on the application requirement. So for example, if you are going to start a project, that project can also be used as a resource group name. Okay, so when you go and create resource group or resources, there is a particular naming standard or tagging standard that you need to have. This can change from organization to organization, but there is a specific guideline that is available on how you can name your resources. So I'll give you that particular standard documentation on how you can name your resources that will help you to name the Azure resource group. So Azure subscription, again, you can use it for multiple different stuffs as we discussed in the last session. So you can create multiple subscription based on your environment. When I say environment, it can be for production or development or testing and so on. And you can also create it for different application or different billing requirement. And you can also use it for segregating your resources, segregating your application, and based on the regional support team, you can also go and create different subscription for regional support and so on. So there are various reasons why we go and create multiple subscription. The top three categories are environment, billing, support, and even for segregating your application and resources, right? Azure Resource Group can also be used if you have only one subscription, and if you want to have segregation among your application or resources, then you can go and create your resource group per project or per environment, like non-prod, production, and so on. And also this resource group will help you to apply permissions, policies, and you can also apply certain lifecycle management at the resource group level. So resource group helps you to apply some specific policies. For example, when I say policy, if you want to disallow creating certain resources, or only if you want to allow them to create a specific type of instance or a specific type of resource, you can also apply that policy. Permission is mainly to give access to a particular user or a service account and so on. So mainly resource group is meant for segregation or categorizing your company's resources into particular group or folder, right? So mainly if you are creating a particular project or a particular application, you can create a separate resource group, and within that resource group you will store all your resources meant for that application or meant for that project. So the biggest advantage of creating this resource group, for example, one application can have multiple servers, right? It can have a web and front end web server, it can have an app server, it can have a database server, and it can have a lot of disks created, it can have some file systems, storage, network, and a lot of components will be created for that application. And if you are storing those different resources in different locations, it is very tough to manage them. It will end up with a lot of stale entries. When I say stale entries, your application might have got decommissioned, but still your disk, your network card, your IP addresses will be there in your Azure subscription. And for example, if you are leaving your IP addresses and all those stuffs in Azure account, public IP addresses are chargeable, right? So it will result in unnecessary cost. So to avoid this stale entries, or if to avoid having resources that are no more needed, you can just go and create a resource group and store all the related resources within that resource group. By storing all the related resources within that resource group, all the resources that are getting created and deleted will be at the same time. So when you delete all the resources within that resource group, or when you create it, it will get created at the same time. And when you go and delete it, all the resources that belong to that application or belonging to that environment can be decommissioned or deleted at the same time. Okay, mainly it is for lifecycle management, as well as it can be used for efficient permission handling and policy management. Okay, so let's go and create a resource group. And before we create the resource group, you need to understand how you can name them better. Okay, so I'll give you a document here. Let me just show it. I'm going to reshare my screen. Okay, this is one of the template that I will be uploading in the Google Drive. You can also use the same similar template. So there are two main template. Okay, let me download all the three. Okay, so it has got downloaded. Okay, let me share my screen again. Okay, So here you've got a naming convention template or a kind of reference document which you can use for your organization also. See, this is a general guideline, but you can change it based on organization to organization. See, what we are conveying here is, if you are creating something with the name, it needs to guide you with what business unit this particular resource belong to, which subscription this resource belong to, what application this resource belong to, and which region, and so on. So if you cover these important stuff in your naming convention, automatically whoever is looking at that resource name can easily identify whether it is belonging to a production subscription or a non-production subscription, because when there is an activity, sometimes there will be human error, right? And human error can be avoided if you have a proper naming convention, proper identification mechanism. So this naming convention framework is very, very important. And if you cover all these 5 items in your naming convention, it will be very easy to identify. Okay, but some organization might have some more mechanism to distinguish your resources, but it might change organization to organization. So you can construct your name based on your organization standard, but these are some baseline standard. You can recommend these 5 naming component to be part of your name that you are giving. So for example, if you are going and creating a resource group, it is always good to start it with RG. RG stands for resource group. So similarly, if you are creating some virtual network, it can have VNet, and subnet can have SNet, and so on, right? These are all some general guidelines. So you need not follow the exact prefix or the exact naming standard, but these are some good to use practice. For example, if you are creating a resource group, it can have something like this. So resource group for SharePoint application, and this belongs to production subscription, and 001 is to have some numbering for your resources. These are some good examples here. So it has got example for almost all the resources. You can use this for your organization also, but you can change it slightly to align with the organization. So you will have a workshop with all your organization or your customer point of contact. So when someone is trying to get into AWS or Azure or any particular cloud platform, we generally have a tagging workshop, naming convention workshop. This is mainly to discuss and come to a common ground, to just decide on what will be the best approach for naming. See, if you are deciding on what should be the name, suddenly, like after a few months or a couple of years, the vendor, the customer might try to move to a different provider. Okay, at that time there will be a lot of challenge. So it is always better to agree on the naming, tagging, and all those things before you go and create it. So that is just an example on how you can do that. Okay, I'll just share that document. You can also refer it, and it will be a good guideline for you. Now we have created an account, we have created a subscription. Now within this subscription, we are going to create a resource. Okay, a resource can be anything that is listed here. It can be a app service, or it can be a virtual machine, load balancer, network interface card, storage account. All these are resources in Microsoft Azure. Okay, for example, if you're going to create a compute virtual machine, you can select that, and you have the option to go and create either a Windows machine or a Linux machine. So let's try to create one. Okay, so if you look at the create resource option, on the very top, you can just see the project details are given. When I say project details, which particular project that this resource belongs to, and the mandatory ones. If you look at here, there are some asterisk next to the component here for the name. So subscription is mandatory, resource group is mandatory, and whatever has got asterisk, these are all mandatory stuff. So if your subscription is inactive, you will not be able to create anything. See, for example, I have a subscription where I have already ran out of the credit. So if I go and create something here, it will not allow me because my subscription is already disabled, and it will not allow me to create any resource here. So you should have an active subscription. See, if the subscription is disabled or not active, you will not be able to create anything. Okay, so that is very important. First thing, you need an active subscription, and you need to create a resource group. By default, there won't be any resource group in your Azure account. But if you leave this empty, what happens here is, if you just go and give a name for your virtual machine. For example, if I say East US Stan virtual machine 1, automatically it will create a resource group with this particular convention. It will use the same system name underscore group. So it is also okay, but then you need to have a proper naming convention to avoid having too many proliferation or too many resource groups getting created. So what you can do is you can go and create a new resource group by selecting this option. You can just say resource group. I can just say this is for, I mean, I can just give it some name like September resource group, and I can just say this is for production and 001. So you can use your application name here, or you can use your project name here to easily identify. So resource group is nothing but a container or a folder to hold all the resources that is getting created for your particular project or a particular activity. So I'm just going to create a new VM here. I'll just call it a September stan prod VM001. Okay, so you can have some naming standard for this also. Okay, so let me just leave it here. And I can select the region. See, very important thing. If you select the region, sometimes it might change your resource groups, or sometimes it might change the subscription or resource group. So you have to be careful before you create anything. You have to review it properly. Okay, so to avoid creating resources in unnecessary location or wrong region or wrong location, so ensure that you review it before you create. Okay, now you have selected the region that where you want to create it. So the regional selection, as I told you, it is mainly chosen based on the latency and based on the customer's proximity. Wherever the customer company's headquarters or the company's end users are there, you will go and create it on that particular region. So I already explained how to choose a region by looking at the upload download speed, latency, and so on. Okay, now we already discussed about the availability option, but I'll also give you some more details. See, these are all not mandatory things. Okay, so if you look at here, there is no asterisk. Like for the virtual machine, you have the asterisk, region has got asterisk, but availability option, security type, VM architecture, these are all not having any mandatory field. Automatically, it will have some default choice. But if you want to change it, you can change it. But for now, we can just go with the first resource creation. We don't have to get too much into the detail. I'll explain each and everything one by one, but I'm just going to start with the Windows VM. We'll also create one more Linux VM. Okay, let me go with Windows 2022 Azure Edition. So it says the selected image. Okay, that's fine. It is checking and it is available. So for now, it is for basic testing, right? So you can create one with one CPU, one GB. But if you want a higher size VM, you can also go and select a higher size system. I can just go with this one with 3.5 GB of RAM, and I can have a username and password. See, there is a difference here. So if you go and create a virtual machine or EC2 instance in AWS, okay, by default, whatever the name that you are giving here, this particular name for the user as well as for the system, the host name, right? It will, Microsoft has got a script that will go and change the name within your operating system. So I'll show you that. Okay, so even the administrator name, the local administrator name will get changed to Stan, as well as your operating system host name will also get changed to the virtual machine name. So there is a script that runs behind the scene in order to do that. So if you want to create a VM in Microsoft Azure portal, the basic screen is more than sufficient. Okay, so the basic screen is more than sufficient. The other tabs are for some additional advanced configuration options which you can select. By default, like, you don't have to do all those things, but we are going to go through each and every tab one by one. But you can, for now, you can just directly skip to review and create after the basic screen and then start creating it. Okay, now you can review how much you are going to be charged. It says 9 Indian rupees. So don't read this like 98953. Instead, it is just only 9 Indian rupees per hour. It is like hourly rate is what they are forecasting here. So it is only 9 Indian rupees per hour. Okay, so validation is succeeded. So you need to ensure that you are looking at the region selection and whether you are selecting the right resource group and so on. So before you say create, just review all the stuffs, whether it is in line with your requirements. See, whenever you go and create a virtual machine, different organization will have different templates. For example, I've got a template here. So this is a template that we generally use to gather the requirement. When you want to create a virtual machine, you need to get the details from the business owner or the application owner. We need to ask them which region we need to create, which resource group we need to select, whether this virtual machine is for production or development, or what kind of environment that the system belongs to, whether this VM needs to be part of disaster recovery, or whether you need higher availability option. So you will get all these details filled in, and before you create the system, you can go and compare whether you have selected the right option. So also you have the mandatory fields here. Without the server name, domain name, you will not be able to create it. So certain fields are mandatory fields here. Okay, so the green ones, and certain fields can be optional fields, which you can choose based on the organization standard. So this is a kind of sample template. I'll also upload this template in our Google Drive. You'll get access to that and you can also use that as a reference for your customer. Okay, now, so I've reviewed it. I've ensured that whatever customer has requested, I've selected the same thing based on the requirements gathering template, and I can just go and say create. Okay, similarly, we'll create a Linux VM, like the Windows VM here. Okay, deployment is under progress. Let me just see until the alarm icon says deployment in progress. You have to wait in this screen. Sometimes if you go back or if you go to home, sometimes your request might get rolled back. So just give a minute for the deployment to be in progress, and then you can move on to different screen here. Okay, so let me move back to the home, and I can also create a Linux VM now. I'm going to select the same resource group. Once after the resource group is created, you can just select the same resource group. I'm just going to call this as Stewards Stan Linux VM01. Okay, so I'm going to select one of the Linux operating system. So you can choose whichever Linux operating system you want. And here for Linux, you have two options. For Linux, you have the SSH public key based access mechanism. I'll also show you how to use that. You can also go with the standard password, username and password combination. So you can also use both of them. I'll show you both options, how to use the key based authentication as well as the password based authentication. You can use any of them. So for Windows remote desktop, it is 3389, and here for Linux we generally use SSH port, secure shell port, to connect to the system remotely. So 22 is the port for Linux, and 3389 is the default port for Windows machine. Now, similarly, I can just go and review and create the system. See, always there is a catch here. So on the basic screen, by default, based on your previous selection, automatically some of the fields will be selected. See, for example, last time I selected one virtual CPU and 3.5 GB RAM because Windows operating system generally needs little more capacity, but I can reduce that here. Okay, I can just go and say see all sizes, and then I can go for the basic free tier service. So here you can see which virtual machine type or free service is eligible. If you are selecting this particular B1S VM, there won't be any charges on your account. Okay, for the free services eligible one. So for 1 year, for 12 months, if you are selecting this B1S standard VM, there won't be any charges incurring on your bill. Okay, so you can use that wherever possible. Okay, always review what you have selected. See, it is very cheaper. Okay, now it has become less than a dollar. I mean, less than an Indian rupee here. Okay, it is 80.8 Indian rupees here. Yeah. Let me go and create it. So 80 pice per hour, right? So that's that cheaper. Okay, now we have created two resources. So we have created a virtual machine, but behind the scenes, when you go and create a virtual machine, let me show you this. So when you go and create it, there are a lot of other things that are being selected here, right? So you have disk, automatically it is going and choosing a default size, and it is automatically creating a disk for you on the back behind the scenes, and it is also going to create a network interface card and a lot of other things. So if you go here, go to your resource group. So you can just search for anything here. You can just say resource group, and within that resource group, you have created this one. See, if you look at the right side, you can see what are the different resources that has got created. So here for the first Windows machine, if you look at the list of resources, so it has created a public IP address in order for the virtual machine to be accessed from the internet. It has created a network security group. It has created a virtual network. It has created a network interface, disk, and all those things. See, this is the important thing, right? When you go and decommission this particular virtual machine, if you don't have a resource group, your resources like the network card, disk, the public IP address might be present elsewhere, and you might leave them as a stale. So this is going to unnecessarily get charged, or it will unnecessarily come with unnecessary cost for your subscription, right? When you go and delete it, you can just delete the entire resource group, so that all the related resources relating to that particular application or project can also be deleted at the same time. Okay, now going back to that particular virtual machine. So here also you have the option to check what resources has been created. If you go to this particular command line or resource group, you can also check this resource group here, number one. And there is one more option where you can also look at certain details. So activity log, you can also check what are the different resources that got created along with this particular virtual machine. If you just click on this particular create VM, let me just close this. So either you can look at the activity here, or you can also select this option to check whether what kind of resources were created. See, if you look at here, expand this option, you'll be able to see what kind of resources that was created as part of this VM creation. It has created a network interface card, network security group, public IP address, and virtual network. So when you go and create a virtual machine, it creates 5 different resources by default. Okay, so biggest advantage is that you can also use the same deployment to redeploy. So if you say redeploy, automatically it will select the default options, and it will help you to create a similar resource like what you have created earlier. Also, you can export the template by selecting this option. So if you want to change something on the particular resource type, and if you want to download that template, you can also use this particular template like infrastructure as a code template to redeploy some more resources with the same configuration. So don't get too much confused for now. You have a lot of options to standardize. You have a lot of options to reuse the existing deployed resources. You can select the same resource to create multiple resources using the deploy option. But for now, when you go and create a particular resource, you have a lot of dependency resources getting created. You need to look into these details. Okay, now you can see that all the resources are created, and you see all the status are looking okay. Yeah, so now let's go and try and connect to that particular virtual machine. So if you want to connect to this Windows virtual machine, you have to use RDP, and you need to check whether the remote desktop protocol is allowed for your network interface card. So go to the networking, and here you can just see whether 3389 is allowed from your particular system. For example, any means it is allowing from any location. Anyone from the internet can access it. But in real production environment, the production systems will only be accessible from the jump server or the terminal server or the bastion server within your organization. They will not expose the production system to open internet, but for testing here, we are trying to access it from our home system or from the internet. But in real production environment, this source will be the IP address of the jump server or the IP range of the specific machines that are allowed to access. Okay, now 3389 is allowed, so you will be able to take RDP. In order to take RDP from your home, you are connecting through the internet, right? So you cannot use the private IP address. Private IP address is only for accessing within the LAN network or within your Azure data center network, right? So this private IP address, you can use it for accessing from one machine to another machine within Azure or within your local area network. From your corporate network, you can use that. But if you are accessing it from the internet, you need a public IP address to access it. So you have to use the public IP address to access that machine from the internet. I'm going to access it from my home using the internet connection. So I'm using the public IP address. So whatever username and password you gave, you can just give that. Okay, you can just see that the certificate of the system is also changed to whatever name that you have given. The same name, you can see it here. So before logging in, you ensure that you are connecting to the right system. Okay, once after you log in, Microsoft has got a script that will run to change your host name, to change the username and stuff. See, you can see that the username is also changed, and also I'll show you the system name that has got changed. And one important thing, or the very important thing, Microsoft doesn't take a lot of time. It creates the resources very quickly, right? It took very few minutes. Like if you just check how much time it took for this VM creation. If you look at here, it just took how much? 50 seconds to create the VM. It is very quick. Okay, for Windows, it might have taken a little more extra time. So you can check the operation details to look at the time it took. Okay, it took 1 minute and 18 seconds. See, within that 1 minute and 18 seconds, it has created, it has changed the host name. When you change the host name, it needs a reboot. Okay, it has also done a reboot also. So within that 1 minute, it only takes 1 minute to create a server. See, if you compare it with your traditional IT, you go and get a purchase a physical server, you rack it, stack it, you do all the firmware installation, BIOS configuration, you install the operating system using the CD or DVD or whatever. It takes at least 3 to 4 hours to create a system in your on premises. If it is a VMware virtual machine, again it takes around 20 to 30 minutes to at least 1 hour to get a fully ready virtual machine. But here it takes only a minute for a Windows machine, and for Linux it is less than a minute. Okay, it is very quick. Okay, now we have logged into the Windows machine in Azure platform. And here, if you look at the system name, it should have changed to the name that you have given in the Azure portal. See, it has also changed here. So if you look at, if you compare it with AWS or other platform, they won't change that. You will see a default name like EC2 or Amazon kind of name. But here, automatically Microsoft runs a script that will change your system name. And also, if you look at the user, you can see that it has changed the username to the name that you gave at the creation of VM. So if you go to the local user management console, you can also see the local administrator account will also get renamed to the Stan. This is the built-in administrator account. Okay, your built-in administrator account has got changed to Stan. So whatever name you are giving, the local administrator will get renamed to that particular account. This is a security best practice from Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't want the default name to be used because it is easier to guess and hack your system, right? So they want to change the local administrator name. As per best practice from Microsoft, they generally change it based on the name that you enter. You can also go and create additional users that you want from here, or you also have the option to do it from the Azure portal itself. I'll show you how to do that from the Azure portal little later. But now, so a lot of things will get updated or change to Microsoft best practices as part of your VM creation. Okay, now we are connected to Windows machine. Similarly, if you want to connect to Linux machine, you can also do that. See, if you have local admin rights, you have the option to install some tools, right? Generally, we go and install tools like Putty, which is a SSH client, right? You can also download it from the Putty portal or Putty portal, putty.org portal. If you go to this portal, you will be able to download the tool. It is a very straightforward installation. You can just install it for accessing the Linux machine using SSH. Just give the IP address here, and you can also give the username and password. In the logging screen, you can enable the log file, and here under SSH, okay, so you can leave it default for now. It will prompt you for the connection, so it is checking whether the fingerprint or whatever is correct. So now it is asking for the username. You can enter the username and password that you gave at the time of VM creation. So now we are connected to the system. See, even the name here also has got changed. Okay, so now you are in the Linux system in Azure platform. So if you don't have local admin rights on your local desktop or the machine, what you can do is you also have a lot of tools that are part of your browser itself. See, I'm using a Chrome browser here, right? In the Chrome store, or there is a tool, SSH tool. Let me just check, I forgot it. Not this. Chrome SSH client. Yeah, secure shell. You can also use the secure shell. See, Chrome itself has got a web store, right? Like your Play Store or like your App Store. Chrome browser has got a web store. You can also go and enable this secure shell within your browser, and you can also use it for accessing your system. So here it has already got installed. You can just say, click on this. So I'm in incognito mode, right? Okay. So let's do one thing. Oh, it is asking for sign in. Okay, because I'm in incognito mode, I'm not logged in, but that is fine. Let me do one thing. I'll just open up a new window. I'll sign in with my default ID. So here I can add, after I sign in with my Google Mail ID or whatever ID you are using, you can go and access the secure shell here. Okay, so when you open the secure shell, it gives you a connection dialog here. You can just click on this connection dialog. Here you can enter the IP address which you want to connect. So for this particular type of connection, you don't have to install anything on your local machine. You can connect from your browser itself. So username at the rate of the public IP address, and you can just say connect. It will prompt for the username and password. And I'm just going to, no, are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes, I have to respond. And it is asking for the password. Okay, I'm able to connect now. So this is one another method that you can use. So this is an integrated option within your web browser. Similarly, if you're using some other third-party browser, you can also use the integrated option within that browser. Okay, so you don't even have to install any tool on your local machine. You can connect from the browser itself. Okay, so this is how you create a virtual machine and access it for Linux or Windows. And as I told you, there is one more option, certificate-based authentication method for Linux that is available, for which you can use the PuTTY client or any third-party SSH client in order to access that. So any questions so far? How to create a VM and how to access it, the basic steps?
So, hello? Hello?
Right. Hello.
Yes, yes, Balaji, go ahead.
Okay. See, my region is Singapore. So, is there anything variation from Singapore to Chennai or India?
So, see, as I told you last time, let me just help you here. So, Azure region choose. So, okay, don't go with the default one. Instead, you can just go with the latency one. See, as a customer, they generally choose a particular region based on the latency or based on the download upload speed from their customer office location. So this is mainly on how they choose a particular region. So we ran this test in the initial session. We looked at the latency test for each of the region. For example, if I want to choose two different options, for example, I want to choose between South India and maybe possibly, as you told me, East Asia or something like that, right? So I just want to do a latency check from the location I am currently sitting. So if you scroll down, it will tell me that Hong Kong is taking 77 milliseconds, Chennai is only 15 milliseconds. So for me, for quicker connection or quicker accessibility, I would prefer Chennai. So similarly, if you want to prefer, what is that, Southeast Asia, Singapore, right? Yeah. So if you select Southeast Asia, it might be a little more faster for us. Okay. So you can choose based on the latency, the upload, download speed, and the availability of the service. Based on the availability of the product and service, you will choose a particular Azure region. Then comes the cost actually. So Azure chart, or you can use different tools to understand how much is the cost difference between running a virtual machine in Singapore and running a virtual machine in Chennai, right? So you can go and look at the cost comparison here. Okay, so region scope. So virtual desktop, where is virtual machine? So you can just compare two different region and look at the cost. But mostly, like when you go to official comparison, you have to use the pricing calculator from Microsoft Azure and decide. Okay, so you have a lot of third-party tools which makes the look and feel very easier, comparison very easier. But here, so we looked at the latency, we looked at the availability of the products and services in that particular region. So we found that the product is available in both Singapore and Chennai, that the product has got the similar latency. Now I need to choose which one is better based on the cost of that particular service. For example, I'll have to go to the virtual machines added here. I can just choose Southeast Asia, right? That is Singapore, Southeast Asia. So if I want to run a Windows virtual machine in Southeast Asia, that is going to cost me around $158 per month. And similarly, if I want to run that same virtual machine in South India, Chennai, it is going to cost me around 173. So Singapore is cheaper. So in fact, people might have thought that Singapore might be uh, costlier because of the infrastructure, because of the location and all those stuff. But we found that Singapore is much cheaper compared to Chennai. But see, it's not always the same case for different services. It depends on the product availability and then the service availability and so on. But mostly what you can do is you can go and create services in the East US, which is the most cost effective region. But this was the case some time back, but a lot of testing, a lot of development, a lot of activities are going on East US. The pricing is a little more I mean, it has changed a lot now. So still, it is comparatively cheaper compared to Singapore or Chennai. It is $40 cheaper compared to Chennai and $20 cheaper compared to Singapore, right? You can still use East US if you want to create a lot of resources and practice more with the given $200 or with the given 13,300 Indian rupees.
Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure. No problem. Yeah, fine. So I think someone else, Subramani, I guess, you also started asking, but your question was not clear to me.
Sorry, the putty or the troubleshooting for everything will be done through.
Come again. Sorry to ask you again.
Yeah, this putty tool maybe it's a Windows machine will be there login and
No.
VLAN
Yeah,
and
yeah. So Putty tool is mainly for remote to Linux machines, right? It is mainly for secure shell access or 22 port. For remote desktop, we have to use this option, the RDP client, or there is one more option called Bastion option that I will show you a little later. Okay, there is an option through which you can access it from within your Azure portal itself through the Bastion concept, which is a very secure option. It's like a VM shell access, something kind of similar to that. It is a very secure method. I'll explain how to enable this Bastion service and access it without using RDP client or without using third-party SSH client.
yeah, okay, sir.
Yeah. So for now, for Windows, use RDP client. For Linux, use the browser inbuilt browser option that I showed you, right? Your browser itself has got a secure shell option, or you can also use some third-party tool that is installed on your laptop or desktop.
Stan?
Yeah,
See, actually, you have created two virtual machines, right? So
correct.
by default, so the disk and means the VNet, everything is automatically get created. Okay.
Correct.
So I just want to understand. So for if we don't want to create for each virtual system, we don't want to create any individual resource group, right? Even if the single resource group, we can create multiple VMs also, right?
True. See, even not just for resource group, the same applies for some more resources also. See, for example, in order to avoid proliferation or creating a lot of resources, generally we go and create a network security group and use it for multiple systems. And similarly, we create the resource group and use it for multiple resources which are getting created. So it is always good to go and standardize and simplify the number of resources getting created so that it is easy to troubleshoot. Okay, so here, yeah, so your question is right. So we are creating only one resource group for hosting all the related resources. So for example, if you have two different application or two different environment or two different project, you can go and create a different resource group. For example, if I have a new project, project 2, I can also just say resource group for project 2 and then create it with that. So maybe this can have a segregation like production or non-production and so on. So you can create the resource group even before creating the resource. You can create it separate as a separate resource. Resource group is also a resource in Azure portal.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
can just create it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Stan, I have one question.
Yeah.
If I want to bring this machine to my local network, do I need to add additional NIC card or?
In order to access it from your local desktop, you just need a public IP address to access. See, for example,
No.
from
To bring it to local network, that is my office network or within my customer
okay,
network.
okay. See, generally, if you want to bring the Azure machine into a kind of on-premises network range or a on-premises private range, we generally establish a VPN connection. We use a VPN tunnel, or we go and create a point-to-site VPN or a site-to-site VPN to bring them on your corporate network range. So that we will see once we discuss the network basics.
Okay.
So you can, yeah, you can make your corporate network and Azure network into a common virtual private network. So we can do that. We can see how to do that later. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Then
So
I have
let's
a
move
small
on.
doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, we have now Azure's cloud server, so we need some backup from the Azure server to local machine. Is it any
Mhm.
possible to bring the data?
Yeah, you can take backup. You can take backup using your existing enterprise product on your on-premises data center, or you can use Microsoft System Center Data Protection Manager tool, or you can even use tools like your Windows Server Backup to take backup on Azure Blob, and you can download it to your local desktop. You have multiple ways to do that. Yeah, you can do that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
you
one
can
more
directly
thing,
configure.
we are
Mhm.
yeah, actually we are already using AWS, so we have a giving the username of administrator, but
Mhm.
the password is very different. It's very different. But we are
Mhm.
using here a stan at IP address. Is it the
Mhm.
same for common Azure or any changes is there?
No. See, you just need to enter the username. See, the reason I entered at the rate of IP address, it's mainly to connect from the secure shell. Secure shell connection method is using that particular syntax. Otherwise, you just need to give username and password. You don't have to enter IP address explicitly. So for different
Okay,
tools, the syntax connection of syntax is different. So that's the reason I gave username at the rate of public IP address, but it's not the same for all the tool. It will differ. Yeah, you can use the same like your AWS connection method. See, if you looked at the PuTTY connection, I just gave the IP address only, like how you used to connect to AWS system.
okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So if you want to connect from this virtual machine 1 to virtual machine 2, you can also use the private IP address also. See, only for connecting from your home network or internet, you need to use the public IP address. From virtual machine 1 to virtual machine 2, you can also use the private IP address to connect between them. Okay, that is possible. Okay, now let us do one more thing. Let us start creating and understanding the other options. So we have just selected the basic option, right? So now let me select the resource group and then try to create one more system. So I'll just give it as 002. Okay, this is fine for now. Okay, so now let's go with the Azure public key option. See here, you can just give the default Azure user, or you can also change the name here. Okay, it will create a new key pair. You can also change the name of the key. Okay, by default it says like it is going to generate a new key pair with the server name underscore key. If you want to change it, you can change it. You can also use an existing public key also. Okay, you can use the same key like AWS EC2 instance. You can have one key pair used for multiple system. So the reason they call it as key pair, Microsoft is going to store the public key on their Azure infrastructure, Azure data center, and they are going to give a private key which is corresponding to that public key. So whenever you log in, the private key that you are storing on your local machine will get compared or will get authenticated with the public key that is stored on the public cloud Azure platform. Okay, so there will be two different keys that are getting created. For Linux system, whenever you go and create it, you can either use username and password as an authentication mechanism to log in, or you can also use a public key private key combination. So we call it as key pair because there are two key involved. So Microsoft Data Center, Azure Data Center will have this public key stored. Private key, customer will be having it. Either it will be distributed to the end users, or it will be stored in the gem server or the terminal server. Okay, so now we are going to use the second option, which is this SSH public key method. And again, the port number is the same. For Linux machine, it is Secure Shell SSH22. Let me go and create it.
Stan, hello.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, Stan. So here, so you means whenever we are entering the username, you said means it will it will the Microsoft, it will run the script on backend, and it will change the operation name also, right? So in the OS level, you said, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, I'm not sure whether I can ask here, because so in case if if means in an organization, if many number of users, they want to log into the system,
Mhm.
so how the username it will get changed? So each and everyone will have their own username and password, na?
Correct, correct. See, at the beginning, you will have a generic user. See here, for our demo class, I'm using my name, but in
Okay.
organization, every organization will have their own standard company organization name, or they will have a corporate username that they will use as a default ID. And then for whatever activities that they are doing, they will have to use their domain account, or whatever account that they are entitled to use. They should not use the generic ID until and otherwise it is needed to reset something, or bring something back to normal. So every corporate will have their own standard. For example, TCS will have TCS admin, or HCL admin, or something with company standard names that they will have. That will be the default name that they will use for all the server, or they might use the customer preferred default name. So that will be the default. That account will be available only for emergency cases. Otherwise, whatever regular routine activities that you do will have to be done using your own user credential. Like, I forgot the name. Okay, so Surender ID has to be used for doing all the activities.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So let me create it here. So it is allowing us to go and download. See, Azure does not store the private key, which means you have to keep the private key very carefully. If you are missing it, or if you are storing it and then it is getting deleted or corrupted, then it is customer's responsibility. So always keep the private key safe. So it is very rare situation that Microsoft helps you, but by default, for free tier and in general cases, Microsoft will never allow you to recreate it or reset it. So store it in a safer location. Okay, so now it is getting created and we have got a private key. So in this method, you have to select the private key instead of username and password to connect to that particular system. So using the same putty tool. Okay, let's wait for the system to get created. It will take a minute. So last time also it took around 40 seconds, right? So it is creating the network security group, public IP address, network interface. It will create the VM and then it will be ready. So yeah, it is getting created. Okay, done. So the system is done. So you can go and check the public IP address and then use that. Okay, copy the public IP address. Now go to the putty screen. So in this tool, I'm just entering the IP address, and then this is very much similar to how we use it in AWS, right? AWS also we have a similar option. You go and select the particular private key file for authentication. So here also I'll just go and use that same file. So here on the right, by default, it will have the PEM file. Okay, so you have to convert that PEM file to a PPK file. See, since you are using this Putty tool, Putty doesn't support the default extension PEM. So PEM stands for private exchange mail, right? That is what you get by default PEM file. But Putty has a standard called the Putty private key file standard. Okay, this is Putty standard. So in order to convert from PEM to PPK, you can download that Putty converter, right, which is Putty Gen tool. So this tool can be used for converting a particular key extension to another key extension. Here we want to convert it from PEM key file format to PPK format. So I'll just load the file which I have downloaded in the document section. So what was the name I gave? This is the name, right? So I have the PEM file. I have to open the PEM file. Once the PEM file is loaded, so when you convert it, you can also add some additional authentication. So in order to avoid someone misusing this particular key, you can also add some key phrase here. Okay, like you can add some password kind of thing, but it is not mandatory, it is optional. You can also add one more layer of security here. So I'm going to save this again in a private key format. Now, when I save it, it will save it in PPK format. So I can use the same name, okay, whatever that I had, and I'll just remove the extension alone and then save it. Okay, so PuttyGen is the tool used for converting a particular format of private key to a particular extension. From PEM extension to PPK extension, I'm using it. You can also convert it, use it for different conversion mechanism. So this is a free tool from, again, Putty organization. Now I have converted it. Now I should be able to go and select the PPK file. So if you go to the document section, I'll be able to see the PPK file and select it. Now I can say open, and this time it will not ask for a lot of details. If I enter the username, automatically it will connect without the password, because instead of password, we are using the PPK file. Okay, so that is the certificate file that is used for authenticating against the public key file that is stored in Microsoft Azure Data Center. So Microsoft will store the public key and they will give us the PEM file, and certain tools will not support the PEM file directly. If the tool that you are using is supporting different file, you can use that particular tool to convert to PPK and use it. So the simpler method is username and password, but this is also one more method through which you can use to connect to Microsoft Azure Linux machines. Okay, so now we have seen three different stuff. One, we have seen how to create an account and how to get a subscription from Microsoft Azure Data Center, and we have started creating a resource. And within the resource creation, we have created one VM with Windows and with username and password combination, and we have created one VM with Linux. Again, we use the username and password combination, and one VM with Linux with the key pair option. Okay, so any questions? We'll take a short tea break. So whenever you do the practice, you also have to try and practice all these things and get it done. Okay, also there are some options through which you can practice all these things without even creating a subscription. So you can search for that video in our YouTube channel. I'll also forward that link on how to create resources without creating an account and without creating a subscription. So you can also have a kind of sandbox account within Microsoft through which you can practice creating VMs and accessing VMs without even creating a separate account and subscription. I'll give you that details and you can follow that. Okay, so let me stop the recording for 10 minutes and we'll be back in 10 minutes.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now we have created virtual machines, right? So for example, we have created 2 Linux virtual machine. It might be for the same project. Okay, so when you create virtual machines without considering the availability option or without considering the high availability, there are chances that both this virtual machine will get impacted when there is a particular server outage or a network outage, or if there is a storage outage going on, both the virtual machines might get impacted at the same time. So how do we avoid it? So generally, when we go and design our application, we might have multiple virtual machines getting created for applications or database or web server. So we'll have multiple virtual machines getting created. So when you have single virtual machine, so definitely it is a single point of failure. But if you create multiple virtual machine, you need to consider high availability or increase the availability of your application. So indirectly, it is going to improve or increase the availability or SLA of your application, right? So single VM, it's a single point of failure. When that VM goes down or when the operating system gets corrupted or application service is down, your entire service is down. But then when you have multiple virtual machine, you can go and place it in such a way that you get lot of benefits, right? So we have already discussed this particular thing in the previous session. So there is an option called availability set. There is an option called availability zone. And there is an option called virtual machine scale set. There is a concept called pad region. And you also have an option called proximity selection. So we will discuss these options one by one. Okay, proximity placement group. Okay, so the availability set option, see, when you have more than one machine, see, all these options are applicable only when you have more than one virtual machine for the same application or for the same particular database or web server. Okay, so availability set means we are having two different or multiple different racks. Okay, so when you go and create the first machine, so you can go and place it in the first rack. Similarly, if you go and create the second VM, automatically it will get placed in second rack and so on. So with availability set concept, when you go and create an availability set, you have two different things, fault domain and update domain. Yeah, screen is shared, Suresh. Yeah, you can rejoin if in case you are not seeing the screen. Screen is shared, yes. So fault domain and update domain. So we already discussed about this in the previous class. By default, you have two fault domain, and maximum you can go up to 3 fault domain, right? Similarly, you have 5 update domain, and you can go up to 20 update domain, right? So how do we create it? See, you can create the availability set as part of the VM creation. See, when you go and create a virtual machine, you have an option called availability here, and within this availability option, you have the option to go and create a availability set. Okay, so here, if you don't have any existing availability set, you have the option to create a new availability set. You can just say create new, and it will open up a prompt. It will have a pop-up window where you can go and create a availability set. You can do this way, or you can also create availability set as a separate resource. Okay, so everything can be created as a separate resource also. So you can create the availability set for high availability and redundancy for your application even before creating your virtual machine. So whenever you go and create your virtual machine, your virtual machines will be segregated or will be placed in multiple racks, so that if a rack level failure or a server level failure or it will tolerate against these failures. Rack failure can be tolerated, server failure can be tolerated. On each rack, you will have a top of the rack switch, right? So network switch failure can be tolerated. And if there is a port issue, or if there is a virtual machine failure or OS corruption on one VM, so all these things can be overcome with this particular availability set concept. But still, you can only get 99.90% SLA with availability set. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create it first, and then we'll move on to availability zone. So I can go and create a availability set. I just copied this, right? I'll just paste it here. Okay, let me create availability set. So when you go and create as a resource, separate resource, you get to understand a lot of details about it. It says availability set is a logical grouping capability of isolating VMs. So when you have multiple VMs, you need to isolate that VMs from one another, so that whenever it is getting deployed, it gets deployed into different rack, different data center, and so on. So it's mainly for resource isolation. Okay, so now here it says it will have multiple physical server, compute rack, storage unit, and network. So it can also tolerate storage level failure also. So if one storage gets failed, or one switch gets failed, or one server gets failed, your VM, your application will still be available for the end user. Okay, now I can just select the resource group and then create a resource in availability set. I'll say September prod availability set 001. Okay, see, as I told you, by default it is 2 fault domain and you can increase it up to 3. By default it is 5 update domain, you can increase it up to 20. So if you have that many number of virtual machines, you can increase the number of fault domain and update domain. Only if you're having 2 virtual machines, you can just leave it with the default minimum. Okay, you can increase it at a later stage also. You can just go and create it. Okay, so one important thing that you need to be aware of is that, okay, you cannot bring an existing virtual machine into the availability set. Whenever you are creating a virtual machine, before creating the virtual machine, you need to decide whether you need to have an availability set or not. So otherwise you have to recreate it. You have to take an image, you have to take a template out of the existing system and then recreate it. Only then you will be able to bring that particular VM into the availability set. In any existing virtual machine cannot be brought into an availability set. You have to recreate it or you have to take an image and redeploy it. Okay, now I have a availability set. Okay, so now when I go and create a virtual machine, I'll be able to see that and the drop down. So I can just call it as EastUS prod Windows V001. Okay, now I can just go and say I need availability set for this VM. So 001 VM will be part of the availability set. And then now I can just select whatever operating system I want. So I can choose some Windows 1 free tier eligible. So I'll go with the free services eligible 1 GB 1 CPU. This is just for understanding the concept, right? So I'll go with the bare minimum. Okay, and create it. So now this time, while I'm creating the first virtual machine, I'm placing this VM as part of the availability set. It says some validation has failed. So we'll go and look at which one is showing red. Okay, I have not selected the availability set. It says classic or aligned. This one, okay, the value must not be empty. Okay, what happened? Maybe, well, at the time of creating the availability set, I might have chosen some wrong option. Let's see. Okay, configuration is fine. Okay, so I have selected unmanaged category. Okay. See, it says if you want to migrate the virtual machine in the availability set to manage disk. So there is a concept called managed and unmanaged. Okay, so as of now, see if I'm going to the disk, it is by default creating what? It is creating a managed category. So let's do one thing. Let's try to convert this to a managed availability set. Okay, we have done that. Now let's see. So just go to other tab and come back. Automatically it will get refreshed. Now I can just refresh it again. Okay, it's not visible. Maybe I have to recreate it. Let's do one thing. Let's create a new availability set and we will check what's wrong with that other one. So I'll call it as September prod availability set. .001 review and create it. Okay, and then create it. So always review it. Okay, so don't be too much confident. So just review whenever you are giving the option create, and then move further. Okay, now we have created a virtual machine, and then we have placed that into the availability set. Similarly, I'm going to create one more VM. See, the problem is you cannot see if I want to bring this VMS into the availability set, there is no option. So what I can do is I can just go and take a backup or an image. So I can just go and say capture this as an image, and then using that image I can create a new VM and then bring it to the availability set. There is no option to directly move it. So before um, creating the application, so if in the future if they want to have better availability or better SLA, you need to design in such a way that you have an availability set even before creating those VM. So it is always a good practice to understand with the customer, discuss with the customer and understand whether they might need high availability for their application in the future. If in case they need it, so go and create availability set, and it can help you to increase the availability at a later time. There is no cost for availability set creation. It is free of cost. So it is always good to understand with the customer and create availability set before creating the first VM. Okay, now we have got one VM created in availability set. So now let's refresh and see. Yeah, it is created. So again, I'm going to create one more VM in the same availability set. Go to Azure Virtual Machine. So I'll call it 002. So here I'll select availability set, and then I'll select, for some reason now it is available. So maybe after converting to managed, you have to go and open the screen again. Sometimes the screen might not get refreshed. Okay, so now I have both the things, but I'll have to select the one which I have chosen for the VM, first VM. Okay, so that it will be part of the same availability set. Okay, always choose the free services eligible one so that you have a lot of cost available for other services creation. Okay, review and create. Now, after we have created this, how do we identify which VM is part of which fault domain and which update domain? Let's do that. Let's check that. So where is the red? Okay, we have selected September prod. Okay, so they say there is a validation issue. So it says, okay, see, this is where it gets interesting. When you're using your free tier account, you have some default usage quota. Currently, I am eligible for creating four CPU in that particular East US region. If I want to create more, I have to go and create it in different location or different region. So what I can do is I can go and decommission existing VM. So let me go here. So whatever VM that is not needed for me, for example, this one and this one, I don't need it. I can just delete it. So you can delete multiple virtual machine with the multi-selection option. Okay, so now I have deleted the VMs, so connections will get terminated. How do we check how much we are eligible for? See, you have to go to your subscription here, go to home, go to your subscription, and within the subscription, there will be a soft quota applied by default. Okay, on your free tier subscription, if you scroll down, you can see that there is a quota applied, usage and quota. For each region, for each service, there will be some quota applied. For example, for compute, you can see that for the East US region, you have got how much? You have got virtual CPU of 4 virtual CPU in the B family or the BS family. Okay, for each family, for each region, you will have some quota. So we already created 4 virtual machine with 1 vCPU each. So automatically it reached the 4 threshold. So if in case you want to do some testing and you want more quota or more CPU, you can just select this option and then you can say request quota increase. Microsoft, you can enter whatever what you call justification, and Microsoft can increase that to a hard quota. This is only this challenge is only there in free tier subscription. Okay, when you go to enterprise subscriptions or pay as you go subscription, there won't be soft quota applied like this. Okay, only for free trial subscriptions you will see some default quota, but that default quota can be increased by requesting a quota increase. See, you can understand which ones are adjustable and which ones are not adjustable. See here, this one says it is adjustable. Yes, if you see that for availability set, it is a hard limit, so you can create up to 2500 availability set and it cannot be adjusted, which means you cannot adjust from soft quota to hard quota. So there is a, it is this, these things are, these numbers are soft limit, whereas these limits that are listed here are hard limit. Okay, so hard limits are not adjustable, whereas the soft limits you can go and request the quota increase and you will be able to create more. But for now, for the interest of time, because Microsoft will take some time to increase the quota, but for now I've just deleted a couple of machines and now I will be able to go and create it. Go to basics again and then come back to review and create. This time it should not throw any error. Okay, validation is now passed because we are within the limit now. You can go and say create. So we have created 2 VMs within the availability set, and if you go and look at the report, you will be able to understand which server is part of which rack. See, by default we have went with 2 fault domain and 2 update domain, which means we will have FD0 and FD1. Similarly, we will have UD0, UD1, update domain 2, update domain 3, and so on. So we have got up to 5 update domains, right? So number will start with 0 and it will go like 0, 1, and 2 like this. So each first server will be part of FD0, second server will be part of fault domain 1, which means server virtual machine 1 is in rack 1 and virtual machine 2 is in rack 2. If rack 1 fails, or if the server 1, physical server 1 fails, or if the network switch 1 fails, still your application will be available because we have another VM running on second rack, second physical server, second network switch, second storage, and so on. Okay, so that is how the availability is enhanced or improved. So if I go to the virtual machine availability set, here I have this availability set. This is where both the VMs were added. If I go to virtual machine tab, you can see that the first machine is part of FD0. First machine is part of UD0. So whenever is Microsoft is patching physical server 1 or networks, if they are doing some activities on network switch 1 or storage, storage firmware or upgrading something on the storage, they will not do the same activity on the second rack. So that is the reason we have got 2 different update domain. So after this VM is created, it will be part of FD1 and UD1. So when Microsoft is updating UD1, they will not touch the UD2 or UD3 or UD4. These systems will not be touched. So they will be doing upgrade activities or maintenance activities of one rack at the same time. So that the other virtual machines running on the different rack will not be impacted. So this is how you can improve the availability of the virtual machine or your application by creating the virtual machines on 2 different rack or 3 different rack based on your customer requirement. So when customer is requesting for the virtual machine, they will fill this particular template. In this template, they will select whether they want to have the virtual machine in different availability set or a different availability zone and all those stuff. So they will select it. So based on the selection, you will have to select it. Sorry. Now, availability set is placing your VMs in different rack, right? So how about availability zone? Availability zone is two different physical data center. So different physical data center. So here, if one data center goes down, both the virtual machines are in the same data center. So both the virtual machines will be down, your entire application will not be available. So to mitigate that, Microsoft gives you an option to go and create your virtual machines in two different physical data center, so that even if one physical data center goes down, your virtual machine 2 will be running on data center 2. So why Microsoft is giving you option like different track when there is a better option like availability zone? So the reason is availability zone, multiple data centers are not available in all the region. For example, if I am going and choosing um, for example, if I'm creating a virtual machine in South India or different location, we are not sure whether that particular location or region has got, let me just select this. The East US definitely has got multiple availability zone. So you have the option to choose the data center 1, data center 2, and data center 3. Zone means it is data center 1, data center 2, data center 3. Similarly, if I'm choosing some other location, for example, if I'm choosing South India or some other locations, let's say Central India will have availability zone, but see, they are giving the option to select the region only, which are having availability zone. So the rest of the locations which are not listed here, South India is not listed, some more other regions are not listed, which means that doesn't have the availability zone option. So only these locations or regions has got availability zone. So availability zone means you have multiple different data center within that particular region itself. So when you go and create virtual machine 1, you can select zone 0, zone 1, zone 2, like that. And based on the number of zones that are available in that particular region, some region might have 2 data centers, some region might have 3 data centers, which means 3 zones. And you can place your virtual machine in different data center and you can achieve up to 99.95% availability. Okay, so when you create the VM, you need to understand from the customer what level of availability they are expecting, and you can place your virtual machine into different availability set or different availability zone based on the customer SLA requirement for the application. So within the region, all the updates or all the changes on the application level is synchronous. When I say synchronous, server 1 and server 2 will be having the same configuration or same data within the particular region, and within the region the data transfer cost is not applicable. It is free of cost, especially for the data transfer. But when you are using some transit gateway or some other specific high-end networking solution, there will be some additional charges, but within the region data transfer cost is not applicable. But if you want to have your virtual machines into two different region, this is for very high availability, right? 99.99. So if you want to have your virtual machine in two different region, then you have to have, you will get a asynchronous replication. There will be some delay in the content between server 1 and server 2 because you are creating the VMs in two different geographical region in order to have very high availability. Because with availability set and availability zone, if the entire region goes down, there is no high availability. Both the virtual machines are running in the same region and your entire application is down. If your application needs to be available despite regional level failure, then you need to create VM1 in East US and VM2 in West US and so on. So that I'll show you how to create that. That is very straightforward. So when you create the VM, you have to select the first VM has to be selected in East US and the second VM has to be selected for the West US region. So as I told you, it is a good practice to go with the pad region concept because Microsoft has got a very high network connection between the pad regions, the region 1 and region 2. So in the third session itself, I showed you Microsoft has got a Azure paired region. So whenever you go and choose a particular specific region, they already give you a guidance on which second region is better for the particular region. For example, if you are creating Hong Kong, you can go with Singapore. If you are selecting Australia East, Australia Southeast is a better regional pair. So that see they are selecting it with a lot of criterias. These two regions will have at least 200 miles of proximity. They will be separated with 200 miles, and there will be also for example, it will be in for example, Chennai is in one side of the coast, right? Similarly, Mumbai is in on the other side of the coast. So they will also have segregation like this. So East US is on one coast, and the other region will be on the western coast. Similarly, in India, Mumbai and Chennai are the regional pair. Pune and Pune and Chennai are the regional pair. So they will not have Pune and Mumbai as regional pair because they are not 200 miles apart. They are within that limit. And if there is a natural disaster in Maharashtra, there will be impact on both the regions. So they have this particular standard. Physically, the regions should have to be isolated by at least 300 miles, okay, 483 kilometers between the data centers in that regional pair. Okay, so if you want to have that level of high availability at the regional level, you will have to do a paired region. You have to create the VM1 in region 1 and region 2, but there will be some minor delay in the applications getting updated because it has to travel through the regional network. So this is auto scaling concept. I'll show you how to do auto scaling. I'll show you how to do that in a later class. But for now, any questions on availability set, availability zone, and paired region?
Yes, Stan.
Yeah.
So you said in availability set, the servers it will get deployed in, which means in the two domains you said, right? Fault domain, update domain, and it will means based on that VM server one it will be in rack one, and next
Mm,
server it will be in rack two.
mm.
So if many customers if they are creating like this, so everything it will get deployed in rack one and rack two, right? So how means how the other racks so whether we can able to utilize the means whether we can choose the racks by ourselves or it will get automatically selected.
No, it is Microsoft has got a placement algorithm behind the scenes, and it is done at the resource manager level. So Microsoft has got this orchestrator, right? Azure Resource Group or Azure Resource Manager orchestrator. So that has got a placement algorithm. So see, different customer, different application, and at the end, the systems in that particular rack should have sufficient space, right? After a particular point of time, definitely the resource limit will reach. So on that particular physical server, it will allow
Okay.
only particular virtual CPU or particular amount of virtual memory. After that limit is reached, automatically the new deployments will have to move to the other racks or other servers, other storage based on the capacity.
Okay. So okay, I got this. So in the availability zone, okay. So means if you want to create uh, some three servers in the same availability zone, maybe in the data center one itself. So in that case, again, availability set it is coming into picture, right? So we can't able to choose in the same zone in the same means the availability set also, right?
Okay, so you cannot mix and match availability zone and availability set. See, both concepts are for having high availability or enabling redundancy, right? So if you want to
Okay.
have two VMs created, you can either go with availability set or availability zone. So if, for example, you can place the VM1 and data center 1 and data center 2. And see, if you are bringing both of them into concept, see, it might become applicable when you have uh, lot many number of VMs, like maybe like 10 VMs or 20 VMs. But still, for your question, like there is no option to mix and match the availability option.
Okay. So in that case, so only we can limit with if we are using availability zone, so only one server we can able to create.
Correct. So when you go and create a virtual machine, you either get an option to go and choose availability set or availability zone.
Okay, so in that case of how, in case if the requirement is needed, like for one application, it need to support 4 servers or 5 servers. So only the availability set is the only option.
Oh, okay. So you are going that way. Okay, so no, not like that. See, if you are creating 4 servers, so you have option to have 4 servers across 3 different data centers, right? See, for example, if I go and select availability zone, so
Okay.
automatically you are selecting data center 1, data center 2, data center 3. Fourth VM will be again part of the data center 1. So which means they are obviously they are part of different data center and different track in different data centers.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, so in the paired region you said, right? So in case
Yeah,
if you are choosing the central India, so the pair it will be like maybe Pune or Bombay, you said, right? So
correct.
we have only option to create only the VM in central India, or we can create the we can have an option to create the VM in the paired region also, which means instead of
Yeah.
creating the VM
Mhm.
in A, so we can able to create the a VM in B also, right?
Yeah. So see here, as I told you, uh, for South India, the pad region, the secondary region is, see, their recommendation is like this. Okay, so Central India, but you can also do the inverse also. So South India,
Okay, okay,
the secondary can be central or west. Both of them can be used. So they have
okay.
definite the network connectivity between these regions are very high speed. Okay, so it has that. See here, if you go to this virtual machine,
Okay.
so you will have an option called enable replication, or can just, yeah. So enable DR. So if you go here, automatically you can start enabling the replication to okay, so I have enabled this trusted VM, right? So that it will not support. That's fine. So let me check whether I have enabled trusted. So I'll show you how to enable replication and how to start
Okay.
having
Yeah, yeah,
DR
sure.
later class. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Stan.
No
Should
problem. Thank you. Yeah.
I,
Mm. Go ahead.
Stan, if I am small organization, so if
Hmm.
I'm creating an station one availability set, should I
Hmm.
create the same configuration in anywhere availability zone for replication or SLA, anything?
Okay, so see, for a startup organization, generally we might not have multiple virtual machine. Okay, if in case they need high availability for their application, we need to understand what is the SLA that they are looking at. If they are looking at 99.90 or 95 or 99, based on their application availability requirement, you can go and place the VM into 2 different availability set or 2 different availability zone, or put them into pad region. So when it is in pad region, you get up to 99.99. With availability zone, you get up to 99.95, and with availability set, you get up to 99.90 of availability. So it is all based on, even for a startup, if their application is mission critical or business critical, you'll have to understand from the application owner or the business owner what is the service level availability requirement for that application. If their application SLA is 99.95, then you have to go for availability zone. You have to place your VMs into 2 different physical data centers.
Okay, if I am
Yeah.
creating the both side servers, should I pay the both servers, right?
Yeah. So a number of resources you are creating, it will be built. Yes.
Now, why I am asking you in AWS, 99.11 time 9 percentage of SLA is there. So in the Azure is 99.95, right? 90 or 95. So
Hmm.
both is comparing to some difference. So if any VM is down, so that time I can get loss via instance and backup everything. So that's why I'm asking this question.
Okay, Sadik. So see, none of the cloud providers give SLA for virtual machine or instance for 99.99s, right? No one can provide that much. 9 nines or 11 nines cannot be provided. The reason I say, maybe you are mixing and matching the storage SLA. For Amazon S3, they can provide you 99.99s, or even Azure Blob Storage gives you that level of storage SLA for 99.99. Let me tell you, let me show you this. Amazon EC2 instance SLA. See, if you look at here, if
I'm
you are going with
asking
multiple
storage
region,
and
it is
instance both also.
no, don't mix and match solution. Okay, so for now we are talking
Okay.
about virtual machine. We need to compare it with
Okay.
EC2 instance. So if you are talking about two different paired region, the maximum availability you will get is 99.99. This is the maximum you can get even in Amazon EC2 or even in Google Cloud virtual machine. You will get maximum of 99.99. But for storage, you might get the 99.99s or 11.9s, whatever you are targeting, that can be achieved in storage level. Okay, so storage SLA is different, compute SLA is different. For compute, 99.99 is the maximum that you can get with paired region. Okay, even that is the case for Amazon compute also, or EC2 instance also.
Okay.
Yeah, fine. So like coming back to this one. So you need to understand what is the customer application SLA requirement, and based on the high availability guaranteeing, you can go and place your VM so that it gets scattered across different availability set or availability zone. So here, let's go and quickly look at the virtual machines created. See, this availability set has got two VMs now. The first VM is running on rack 1 and the second VM is running on rack 2. So fault domain 0 and fault domain 1. Similarly, it is having two VMs running on different update domain. If I go and create more VMs, automatically it will get placed into the number of fault domains and update domains that you have created. So you can just see how many VMs, how many fault domain, and so on. So there is one more concept called proximity placement concept. That is a very concept which is similar to your virtual machine, right? You have a concept in your on-premises where they call it as affinity, anti-affinity. So I'll explain that maybe tomorrow's session. I'll explain what is proximity placement group and how you can bring the virtual machines physically close to each other. Because now for availability requirement, you are separating the virtual machine to have high availability. In some application requirement, you need to bring the virtual machine closer to each other in order to have quick latency or low latency. In order for the workload to communicate between each other, you need the virtual machine to talk to each other, like application VM to database VM or web server to application server. The connectivity has to happen in a very quick way, or rather there should be very low latency. In order to achieve that, you have an option called proximity placement group concept, that is mainly to enable low latency or bring the systems closer to each other. I'll show you how to create that and how to get that deployed, because we have a lot of other things to discuss before we go and look into that. So that is part of your advanced option here. If you go to advanced option, you have the option to go and choose the proximity placement. So this is mainly to group the virtual machines physically closer to each other. Okay, I'll explain that a little later. Maybe tomorrow we'll cover that. So, but for now, any questions on the basic option? So we have seen how to create a Azure account, how to create a Azure subscription. We also saw how to create a resource group, and we saw how to create a Windows VM, Linux VM, and we also looked at two different options. One is the password authentication type. We also saw how to use the public key authentication type, and we explored how to select the region and the availability option. So tomorrow we will see how to create an image, how to what are the different purchasing options that are available, and we will also start exploring the remaining sections here. So tomorrow we will be covering the remaining sections that are part of your virtual machine. So any questions so far on the basic account creation, subscription creation, and VM creation?
Yeah, Frank, sorry to disturb you. I have very small question
Mhm,
regarding the availability set and availability zone.
mhm,
Okay, so this is for basically for availability of the resource, I mean a VM. That is
mhm,
the way we have to split same data center or the different location of data center. So my question is here, if you I'm owning one application, some application It will mix and match from Solaris server and the Linux servers and also Windows server. Almost I set up some 20 to 30 servers for the one application. So in this case, in the application production and the development, so many things is coming. Okay, so and the customers specifically asking only the production servers, we need availability. The rest is okay, normal. So in this case, I need to first create the availability set or zone, then I create the VM, correct?
Yeah, availability set has to be created before
Then
creating the VM. Yes.
correct. So then automatically the available set is configured in the particular production VMs, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct,
So
correct. That is
that's
correct, Balaji. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So, yeah,
And
in
another,
order to,
and this,
yeah.
mm,
Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah. And another one, this particular the record sections I can able to, you can just download. I can able to see, right? This the today's section I can able
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah. The
able
session
to.
will be available in next 1 or 2 hours, so you'll be able to watch
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Okay. That is my. That's all.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks.
yeah, let me explain a little more on the same question. See, for example, when you are creating a new application or a server for a particular application, there are multiple things to consider, as you said. Okay, like Balaji highlighted, one application might have web server and it might have app server and some middleware server and database server and so on. So the application SLA will be based on all these components. It is called as composite SLA. Whenever we go and calculate an SLA for an application, you have to calculate the SLA across the component. It can be across server, storage, and database and so on. Similarly, like you have to multiply the SLA across the different layers or different components to arrive the application SLA. See, when you go and create a single VM, and one more important thing, there is another catch here. See here under the disk, whenever you are going and creating a disk, by default, it is choosing the premium SSD category disk. But in some cases, some customer want to create standard SSD for a light workload or a web server or a basic server, or if they are going with development testing, they cannot afford a lot of cost. So they want to reduce the cost. So they will say, go and select the standard SSD. So in such cases, you need to say that the SLA will also reduce. Okay, only for premium SSD, you are getting 99.90 SLA. So if you ask me like what is the SLA for single VM with standard SSD, the SLA will be only 95%, which is very, very low. Okay, so you have to be very careful. You need to convey that particular thing. So you cannot say that single VM with single VM is always giving you 99.90. So it is not the case. With standard SSD disk combination, it is only 95%. Similarly, you're going with sorry, it is for standard HDD, and for standard SSD, SLA is 99.50. And similarly, single VM with premium SSD will give you the 99.95 SLA. So this is very important, because sometimes like when customer wants to reduce the cost, we will go and change it, but we need to highlight that the SLA will also decrease when we go and change the disk category or any other associated category. So for multiple virtual machine, automatically with availability set, for multiple VM with availability set, you get 99.95. In different data center, and you get more and more SLA on this. So see, these concepts are mainly for mitigating against rack failure, server hardware failure, OS corruption, network switch failure, storage failure, or any unexpected outages, right? Unexpected outages may be because of cooling failure in a data center, or it may be because of a hardware memory failure. It can be for many different reasons. And this update domain concept is mainly to overcome any planned activities. When I say planned activities, Microsoft will take care of maintenance of their physical data center, right? So they will do maintenance on the switches, storage device, server device. So when they do the maintenance activity on rack 1, they will not touch the rack 2 at the same time. So they will be doing the maintenance on update domain 0. When I say update domain 0, it can be multiple different rack, but yeah, so they will not touch the different tracks that are part of the same availability set. Okay, so this availability set can help you mitigate failures across unplanned issues. When I say unplanned, hardware issues or OS corruption, or it can be different reason, unexpected downtime, and also planned outages. So this is planned maintenance. And fault domain is unexpected downtime, or you can just say unplanned hardware issue. So fault and both planned activities, planned and unplanned, can both be mitigated using availability set. Okay, so yeah, we will continue discussing more about the compute and the virtual machine tomorrow. So we'll continue and discuss all these options that are available. So as a architect, you need to understand what is the availability requirement for your application at an overall level, and you need to design in such a way that your application meets the SLA requirement. Okay, so this is a very basic thing that I've conveyed, but after you start working in real production environment, you will get to understand in more details about this. Okay, any general questions on what we have discussed so far?
I stand Shagar here.
Yes, Sega.
Availability set and availability zone is anything cost added, or I think we only for VM
No,
cost
so
only?
see, only the VM cost and the associated disk, and if there is any other services that you are involving, like load balancer or traffic manager, so those services will be charged. See, whenever you go for more VMs, multiple VMs, your application traffic should have to be distributed or load balanced, right? Then definitely you need to create additional services like load balancer or traffic manager. So those are all additional cost. But availability set as such does not add more cost. It is a kind of concept or a mechanism to isolate or segregate your resources.
Okay, Stan. Okay, thank you.
So I'll be here for 2 more minutes. Okay, so if you don't have questions in English, so Tamil கேட்கலாம் இப்ப. So I'm done for the day. Okay, I'm done for whatever I'm trying to cover today. So if you have questions in Tamil, you can ask now.
And this is Nimal here. One question.
Yes, Nimal.
So during this training process, right? You created a virtual machine. If during the training process we created a virtual machine, will we be also creating some software or some services will be added to that, or it will not be?
No, come again, Nimal. Your voice is going low.
Is it okay? Let me come close to the mic. So, இப்போ ட்ரைனிங் செஷன்ல வந்து நம்ம virtual machine கிரியேட் பண்ணோம். இப்போ கோயிங் ஃபார்வர்ட் சம் செஷன்ல வந்து ஏதாவது அவுட்லுக்கோ இல்ல எனி ஆஃப் த மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட் இதை வந்து அதுல ஆட் பண்ணி பார்ப்போமா இல்ல?
ஓகே சர்வீசஸ் வந்து அதுல அப்ளிகேஷன் உள்ளுக்குள்ள நம்ம லோட் பண்ணுவோம். லைக் ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் அதுல டிஃபால்ட்டா மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட் ஆப்ரேட்டிங் சிஸ்டம்குள்ள வர ரோல்ஸ் அண்ட் ஃபீச்சர்ஸ் எனேபிள் பண்ணுவோம். பட் அப்ளிகேஷன் லெவல்ல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஆப் சர்வீசஸ்லாம் வரும்போது நம்ம எப்படி வந்து ஒரு வெப் ஆப், மொபைல் ஆப்லாம் வந்து அதுல டெப்ளாய் பண்ணலாம்ன்றது Azure ஆப் சர்வீசஸ்ல பார்ப்போம். பட் மூவிங் ஃபார்வர்ட் we will have some roles and features.
You will show that, right?
Yeah, we'll see that. So see, next 2 or 3 classes we are going to still discuss around the compute, or at least the virtual machine only. We have a lot of things to cover.
Compared to the last 2 sessions, this is more interesting.
As we go more and more practical, right, people will get a little more interested. See, theoretical session we can listen for 1 hour or 1.5 hour maximum. So beyond that, like we will get distracted. And luckily I'm seeing good participation today besides the India-Pakistan match, right? So it is good to see a lot of people are dialed in. Go ahead Rajesh.
Sir, is possible once later on I can add the memory in virtual PC, virtual machine?
We can see how to increase the CPU memory. We'll see
and
that.
Disk size also.
We'll see
So
that.
later on increase, it's also chargeable, no? Later on the.
Yeah. So the amount of it is all based on the configuration, right? So the more you add in terms of CPU, memory, and storage capacity, based on the increase in capacity, the charges will increase. Yes.
You will
And
show not the
also,
lab section.
yeah,
That option
I'll
also.
show you. I'll show you. Yes, Rajesh. We'll see that. Yes.
Oh,
ஸ்டான்லி,
thank you.
இப்போ விஎம் வந்து ரன் ஆகிட்டு இருக்கும்போது, ஹலோ, இப்போ
கேளுங்க
விஎம் வந்து ரன் ஆகிட்டு இருக்கும்போது நம்ம இப்போ ப்ராசஸர் கோர் இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்றதோ இல்ல ரேம் இல்ல ஹார்ட் டிஸ்க் இந்த மாதிரி இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணும்போது எதுவும் இன்ஸ்டன்ஸோட ப்ராப்ளம் வருமா இல்ல நம்ம அதை எப்படி ஸ்டாப் பண்ணிட்டு தான் பண்ற மாதிரி இருக்குமா? இப்போ ஆன் பிரமிசஸ்ல எப்படி நமக்கு தெரியும்? இதே
ரிஸ்க் வந்து ஆன்லைன்ல பண்ணலாம். இப்போ வந்து மைக்ரோசாஃப்ட்டை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் there is lot of different generations. ஓகே, நம்ம நாளைக்கு வந்து VM உடைய ஜெனரேஷன் 1 ஜெனரேஷன் 2 பத்தி பார்ப்போம், டிஃபரன்ஸ் பார்ப்போம். ஈவன் வந்து VMware இனிஷியலா வந்தப்போ வந்து அங்கேயுமே வந்து ஹார்ட் பிளக் சிபிஓ இல்ல ஹார்ட் ஆட் சிபிஓ அந்த ஆப்ஷன்ஸ்லாம் இப்போ கிடையாது. அது ஓவர் த பீரியட் வந்து தே ஃபைன் டியூன் தேர் டெக்னாலஜி அண்ட் தே ஸ்டார்டட் கிவிங் ஹாட் பிளக் ஆர் ஹாட் ஆட் ஆப்ஷன். இப்போ வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஜென்ரேஷன் 1 VMs தான் மெஜாரிட்டி இருக்குங்க. அஜூரோடைய பிளாட்ஃபார்ம்ல ஹைப்பர்-வியோடைய ஜென்ரேஷன் 1 VMs தான் மேக்ஸிமம் இருக்கு, 80% இருக்கு. ஸோ அதுல எல்லாமே வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா யூ நீட் டு டேக் டவுன் டைம் இன் ஆர்டர் டு இன்க்ரீஸ் CPU அண்ட் மெமரி. பட் ஸ்டோரேஜ் வந்து லைவாவே ஆட் பண்ணலாம். ஓகே, தட் இஸ் நாட் அன் இஷ்யூ. வெரஸ் CPU அண்ட் மெமரி வந்து ஜென்ரேஷன் 1 VMக்கு ஸ்டில் யூ நீட் டு டேக் டவுன் டைம். அண்ட் நீங்க இப்போ ஆன் ப்ரெமைசஸ்ல ஆட் பண்ற மாதிரி CPU மட்டும் ஆட் பண்றது இல்ல மெமரி மட்டும் ஆட் பண்றதெல்லாம் பண்ண முடியாது. தெர் இஸ் a proportion for how to do that. ஸோ நாளைக்கு வந்து அந்த இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ் ஃபேமிலினா என்ன, அந்த இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ் ஃபேமிலியில வந்து என்னென்ன டைப் இருக்கு, என்னென்ன ரெக்யர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு என்ன சூஸ் பண்ணுவோன்றதெல்லாம் டீடைல்டா தெரிஞ்சுப்போம். தென் ஐ வில் ஆல்சோ ஷோ யூ ஹவு டு இன்க்ரீஸ் த கெப்பாசிட்டி ரிசோர்சஸ்.
பக்கெட் நம்ம இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணும்போது டவுன் டைம் தேவைப்படாது, கரெக்டா?
ஸ்டோரேஜ் சொல்றீங்க? ஆமா, ஸ்டோரேஜ் வந்து கிடையாது. ஆமா, ஸ்டோரேஜ்ல வந்து நீங்க கெப்பாசிட்டி இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணும்போது there is no down time, at least for the Windows disk. லினக்ஸ்ல வந்து LVM அதெல்லாம் கிரியேட் பண்ணிருந்தீங்க அப்படின்னா there is a different approach for that. Yeah, but for I mean உங்களுடைய क्वेश्चनக்கு ஆன்சர் வந்து yeah, there is no downtime to most cases in terms of storage increase.
ஓகே, இந்த மாதிரி RAM இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணும்போது
அதுக்கு தேவை downtime.
இல்ல பிசினஸ் டைம்ல தான் பண்ணுமா இல்ல அவங்க சைடுல இருந்து 24 hours நைட் டைம்லயே அவங்க சப்போர்ட் பண்ணுவாங்களா சிஸ்டம்?
நம்ம தான், அதாவது நீங்க இங்க நம்ம வந்து we are not talking about physical server capacity increase பத்தி நம்ம பேசல. we are talking about a virtual machine உடைய CPU or memory increase. we are talking only at the virtual machine level. See, when you feel like the physical server doesn't have that capacity, automatically உங்க VM வந்து it will get migrated to a different hardware where you will get that amount of capacity.
Okay.
Backendல வந்து
and one more question,
it will move your VM to a different hardware where you have enough capacity. DRS algorithm வந்து அதை டேக் கேர் பண்ணிக்கும்.
ஓகே, அண்ட் ஒன் மோர் கொஸ்டின். இப்போ இன்கேஸ் நான் சொன்னேன் இல்லையா, அப்போ ஸ்மால் ஒரு ஆர்கனைசேஷனுக்கு ஒரு விஎம் கிரியேட் பண்றாங்கன்னு சொல்லி, இப்போ அவங்ககிட்ட ஒரே ஒரு விஎம் தான் இருக்கு, அந்த விஎம் ரன் ஆகுது. அன்பார்ச்சுனேட்லி ஏதாவது ஒரு ரீசனால ஒரு ஓஎஸ் வந்து ஃபெயிலியர் ஆயிடுச்சு இல்ல டேட்டா கரப்ட் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னா அசூர் சைட்ல இருந்து எப்படி அது நமக்கு ரெக்கவரி இல்ல சப்போர்ட் எந்த மாதிரி பண்ணுவாங்க?
Microsoft is not responsible for data. Okay, so whatever data that you have within your operating system or for your application, you need to take a backup. You need to ensure that you have the data to restore. அவங்க வந்து never they will take care of data. Unless நீங்க வந்து அதை வந்து அஷூரோடைய பிளாக் ஸ்டோரேஜ்லயோ இல்ல அஷூரோடைய ஃபைல் சிஸ்டம் ஸ்டோரேஜ்லயோ வச்சிருந்தீங்க அப்படின்னா அட்லீஸ்ட் they are responsible. They have option to help you with restoration option. But VM லெவல்ல they don't have access. VM வந்து in infrastructure as a service categoryல we are responsible for anything above the VM. Customer is responsible for anything above the virtual machine. நம்ம அந்த இனிஷியல் கிளாஸ்ல பேசணும் இல்லைங்களா, சர்வீஸ் மாடல்ல விஎம்ல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா விஎம், ஓஎஸ், டேட்டா, அப்ளிகேஷன் அது எல்லாமே வந்து கஸ்டமர் தான் வந்து we need to ensure that we have a backup for your data, we have a mechanism to restore your application. எல்லாமே நம்ம தான் டேக் கேர் பண்ணிக்கணும்.
பட் அதுக்கான சர்வீஸ் சார்ஜ் கொஞ்சம் டிஃபர் ஆகும் இல்லையா?
See, ஒரு சில ஆப்ஷன்ஸ் இருக்கு. there are some troubleshooting options or mechanism to restore using Azure உடைய பிளாட்ஃபார்ம்ல, Azure உடைய கன்சோல்ல வந்து நிறைய டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஆப்ஷன்ஸ் வச்சு நீங்க ரெக்கவர் பண்றதுக்குலாம் மெக்கானிசம் இருக்கு. பட் அதை நம்ம போக தெரிஞ்சுப்போம். பட் உங்களுடைய இனிஷியல் கொஸ்டினுக்கு வந்து when there is a data corruption or when there is something at the application level, நம்ம தான் வந்து we have to ensure that you have a valid backup.
Okay. Thank you.
வெங்கட் ஒரு கொஸ்டின் தான்.
Yeah, go ahead, வெங்கட். கேளுங்க வெங்கட்.
இப்போ இதுங்க அவைலபிலிட்டி செட் கிரியேட் பண்ணிட்டு தான் விர்ச்சுவல் மிஷின் ஆட் பண்ணணும்னு சொன்னீங்க இல்லையா?
ஆமாங்க.
ஸோ இப்போ ஆஃப்டர் இப்போ ஆட் பண்ணதுக்கு அப்புறமா அவைலபிலிட்டி செட்ஸ்ல ஏதாவது சேஞ்சஸ் இருந்தால் பண்ணால் இட் வில் இம்பாக்ட் டு விர்ச்சுவல் மிஷின்ஸ் ஆர் லைக் தட் ஏதாவது?
இல்ல அதெல்லாம் ஒன்றும் பண்ண மாட்டாங்க. நீங்க அவைலபிலிட்டி செட்ல மேக்ஸிமம் என்ன பண்ணுவீங்க, யூ வில் ஜஸ்ட் சேஞ்ச் இன்க்ரீஸ் த நம்பர் ஆஃப் டொமைன் நம்பர் ஆஃப் எஃப்டி ஆர் யூடி அதுதான் பண்ணுவீங்க. அதனால எந்த இம்பாக்டும் வர போறது இல்லை.
ஓகே.
go ahead ராஜா.
இப்போ virtual machine டிஃபால்ட் கெபாசிட்டி எங்க போய் பார்க்கணும்?
ஓகே, அது நம்ம நாளைக்கு அந்த இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ் ஃபேமிலி பத்தி பார்க்க போறோம். அதுல அது தெரியும், அது டீடைல்ஸ் தெரியும் உங்களுக்கு.
ஸ்டான்
go ahead சேகர்.
ஸ்டான் இப்போ என்னோட என்வரான்மெண்ட்டில் ஒரு 5 விஎம் வச்சுருக்கேன். ஸோ அந்த 5 விஎம்க்கு கம்யூனிகேஷன் எப்படி நம்ம எனேபிள் பண்ண முடியும்?
பார்ப்போங்க. அதெல்லாம் நெட்வொர்க்கிங் பேசிக்ஸ்ல வந்து நம்ம எப்படி இன்டர்னல் கம்யூனிகேஷன் ஒர்க் பண்ண வைக்கிறது, எப்படி நம்ம செக்யூரா வந்து எந்தெந்த மிஷின்ல இருந்து எப்படி கனெக்டிவிட்டி எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ் பண்றது, அதெல்லாமே நம்ம டீடைல்டா கனெக்டிவிட்டி பத்தி பார்ப்போம்.
ஓகே, திஸ் இஸ் நெட்வொர்க் பார்ட்.
ஆமா பேசிக் நெட்வொர்க்கிங்ல ஃபர்ஸ்ட் கிளாஸ்ல செகண்ட் கிளாஸ்ல நெட்வொர்க்கிங் கிளாஸ்ல பார்க்க ஆரம்பிப்போம். இப்போதைக்கு இந்த இதுவுமே வந்து இப்ப நாளைக்கு நாளன்னைக்கே கொஞ்சம் அதை கவர் பண்ணுவோம். பட் இன்னும் நிறைய விஷயங்கள் கவர் பண்ண முடியும். இன்னைக்கு நம்ம பேசிக்கா என்ன பார்த்திருக்கோம் அப்படின்னா, ஒரு அக்கௌண்ட் எப்படி கிரியேட் பண்றது, எப்படி ஒரு சப்ஸ்கிரிப்ஷன் கிரியேட் பண்றது, எப்படி ஒரு விஎம் கிரியேட் பண்ணி அதை கனெக்ட் பண்றதுன்ற ஒரு பேசிக் விஷயங்கள் தான் பார்த்திருக்கோம். போக கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சமா அட்வான்ஸ்டா வந்து கம்ப்யூட்டர்ல இந்த விஎம்ல இன்னும் நிறைய விஷயங்கள் தெரிஞ்சுப்போம். கனெக்டிவிட்டியும் கொஞ்சம் ஓரளவுக்கு கவர் ஆகும். பட் ரொம்ப செக்யூர்டா எப்படி கனெக்ட் பண்றது, எப்படி நம்ம அதை வந்து செக்ரிகேட் பண்றதுன்றதுலாம் நெட்வொர்க்கிங் செஷன்ல இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் டீடைலா தெரிஞ்சுப்போம்.
ஓகே. ஏன்னா இது எஸ்எஸ்சிஎம் அந்த கிளாஸ் அட்டென்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கேன். ஸோ அதுக்கு என்வரான்மெண்ட் வந்து செட்டப் ரெடி பண்றதுக்காக, ஸோ அது கம்யூனிகேஷன் அதுக்காக கேட்டேன் ஸ்டான்.
ஓகே. சரி, நீங்க டிஃபால்ட்டா வந்து கிரியேட் பண்றீங்கல்ல, இப்ப கிரியேட் பண்ணும்போது என்ன ஆகும் அப்படின்னா, இது எல்லா விஎம்மும் ஒரே நெட்வொர்க்குள்ள தான் வந்து கிரியேட் ஆகும். இங்க பாருங்க, இப்ப நெட்வொர்க்கிங்ல பை டிஃபால்ட்டா இந்த 3 சிஸ்டமுமே வந்து ஒரே நெட்வொர்க்ல தான் இருக்கும். அதை பாத்தீங்கன்னா இந்த -vnet இதுல இருக்கு. இப்போ இந்த இடத்துல கவனிச்சீங்க அப்படின்னா, வித்தின் த வெர்ச்சுவல் நெட்வொர்க் டு வெர்ச்சுவல் நெட்வொர்க் வந்து பை டிஃபால்ட்டா எல்லா போர்ட்டும் எல்லா கனெக்டிவிட்டியும் வந்து அலோடு. ஸோ அதனால எனி போர்ட் எனி ப்ரோட்டோகால் வந்து அலோடா இருக்கும். அதனால அதுல எக்ஸ்ட்ரா எதுவும் பண்ண தேவையில்லை. ஒரே விநெட்ல இல்ல ஒரே இதுல குரூப்ல கிரியேட் பண்ணும்போது. பட் நீங்க டிஃப்ரெண்ட் வெர்ச்சுவல் நெட்வொர்க் டிஃப்ரெண்ட் இதுல கிரியேட் பண்ணும்போது தான் நம்ம கம்யூனிகேஷன்லாம் அலோவ் பண்ணோம். பை டிஃபால்ட்டா ஒரே விநெட்ல இருக்கிற எல்லா விஎம்ஸும் இட் வில் பி அலோட் டு கம்யூனிகேட் ஆன் எனி போர்ட் எனி ப்ரோட்டோகால்.
ஓகே ஸ்டான். ஓகே
ஓகே.
ஒரு சின்ன டவுட்டுங்க. இந்த ஹார்ட் டிஸ்க் சொன்னீங்க இல்லைங்களா, ப்ரீமியம் எஸ்எஸ்டி அண்ட் ஸ்டாண்டர்ட் எஸ்எஸ்டி. ஸோ இப்போ நம்ம ஒரு விர்ச்சுவல் மிஷின் கிரியேட் பண்றோம் அப்படின்னா அந்த ஹார்ட் டிஸ்க் சூஸ் பண்றதை பொறுத்து தான் அந்த பிசிக்கல் சர்வர்ல போய் கிரியேட் ஆகும் இல்லைங்களா?
ஆமா அது நம்ம எப்படி என்ன மாதிரி ரெக்யர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு என்ன சூஸ் பண்ணுன்றது நாளைக்கு வந்து நம்ம இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ் டைப் இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ் டிஸ்க் அதெல்லாம் வந்து நம்ம டீடைல்டா பார்ப்போம். அது ஆமா. ஆனா நான் இன்னும் அது சொன்னேன், ஜஸ்ட் வந்து ஹை லெவல்ல சொன்னேன். பட் நாளைக்கு தான் அதை பத்தி டீடைல்டா தெரிஞ்சுக்க போறோம். ஸ்டாண்டர்ட் எஸ்எஸ்டினா என்ன, ப்ரீமியம் எஸ்எஸ்டினா என்ன, அல்ட்ரா எஸ்எஸ்டினா என்ன, அது எந்தெந்த சிச்சுவேஷன்ல நம்ம சூஸ் பண்ணுவோன்றதெல்லாம் நாளைக்கு நம்ம தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம்.
பட் ஹார்ட்வேர் வந்து டிஃபரெண்ட்
ஆமா கண்டிப்பா வந்து டிஸ்க் வேற டிஸ்க் தானே. இப்போ வந்து நம்ம HDDனா அது வந்து நம்ம பழைய மேக்னெட்டிக் ஹார்ட் டிஸ்க். நீங்க வேற SSD சூஸ் பண்றீங்கன்னா அது இப்போ லேட்டஸ்டா வர நம்ம அந்த NVMe அதுலயே நிறைய கேட்டகரிஸ் இருக்கு. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி அது NVMe டிஸ்க்ல இருக்கும், இல்ல வந்து இந்த சாலிட் ஸ்டேட் டிரைவ்ல இருக்கும், ஃபிளாஷ் டிரைவ்ல.
ஓகேங்க.
ஆமா
ஓகேங்க.
Okay, then I'll stop sharing. Thank you for joining in today. நாளைக்கு நம்ம will continue.